Now, leaseholders paying extortionate rates to freeholders are being exploited in what MPs are calling the PPI of the house building industry.
That's right. In 2015, 43% of new build properties in England and Wales were leaseholds.
That's compared to 22% back in 1996.
Well, ministers plan to stop developers who can increase ground rent fees up to £10,000 a year on new build homes by 2060, making those homes unsellable.
The Home Builders Federation have responded to the terms, saying the industry is committed to working with all parties to ensure that the terms on which leasehold homes are sold are fair and work for the homeowner.
Well, let's go to Westminster to join our senior political correspondent, Robert Nisbet, who's got more details on this. And Robert, what exactly are the government planning to do to stop people paying these so-called extortionate leasehold rates?
Well, we should start off by saying that this is a consultation period. There's going to be an 8-week consultation, and this is the start of the process with the Community Secretary seeking various opinions and views as they try to investigate this. But I think it's pretty clear that he's going to find cross-party support, certainly in Parliament, for this, because if you really just spell out what it means, it's pretty much a nightmare for those who are trapped in it, especially some developments in the north of England specifically, who buy a house and find that not only are they having to service their mortgage, they're also having to pay these ground rents that are increasing exponentially. In the case of one house in Bolton, cost £200,000, and they're seeing the ground rent increase by 3,000% to reach almost £10,000 by the year 2060. Sajid Javid said this is just unacceptable. This is a quote from his article that he wrote in the Times newspaper today. Well, these practically feudal practices are a nightmare for the homeowners caught up in them. Unjust and unfair leasehold terms also risk making relatively new houses extremely unattractive to buyers. So what he's also suggesting is that it's not only these ever-increasing ground rents, but also if you want to buy out your lease, you can often be quoted a ridiculous sum of money, but also charges for alterations as well. The implication that this is something of a racket. So what the government would like to do is end this practice entirely, but also reduce ground rents in flats to what they call peppercorn levels, so an insignificant nominal amount, but also ending help to buy loans for new build leaseholds as well. And they're hoping that this will end the practice.
OK, let's talk about one of our top stories today. Leaseholders paying extortionate rates to freeholders, and they're being exploited in what MPs are calling the PPI of the house building industry. Ministers plan to stop developers who've been charging ground rent fees of up to £10,000 a year on new build homes. Let's speak to the Community Secretary, Sajid Javid, who joins us from Westminster now. Good morning, Mr Javid.
Good morning.
Perhaps you can explain why we have this system of leasehold and freehold in the first place.
Well, what we've announced today is a crackdown on unfair leasehold sales. So let's start with flats. I think most people would understand if you buy a flat, it's got shared common spaces, that why a leasehold often is the right answer and makes sense. But what we've seen in the last few years especially is a huge increase in the number of houses, not flats, but houses that are being sold on leasehold terms for no good reason. And not worse still, once they've been sold, those people that have bought those houses are then subject to ground rents that are ever escalating. And I think these are just being used as another income stream by these developers. It's not in the interests of consumers, and it is unfair in almost every way, and it's got to stop, and that's why we've announced this action today.
It is welcome news for people who are facing extortionate ground rents, certainly, but the Scottish Government back in 2004 got rid of all this, I think, and every property in Scotland pretty much is freehold. There's no such thing as leasehold. You 100% own your property. You can, of course, then rent it out to tenants. Why is England and Wales so far behind?
Well, if you look at the English market, is first of all sales last year, there were about 47%, I think, that were on leasehold terms, but most of those are flats. And I think people understand where you have a need for a leasehold in those situations, why that happens. And when it comes to houses, though, when applying that, and particularly in the northwest of England, for some reason in the northwest of England, this has really taken off. We've now got the situation where something like 10,000 houses were sold last year on such terms. And it is time now to crack down and to make sure we take this action. That's what we're setting out in this consultation today, but also with ground rents. So in in many situations, and this applies to flats as much as houses as well, we've seen examples where a ground rent might start out typically at, say, a couple of £100 a year, and within 50 years it could be £10,000. This is clearly unacceptable, and that's why this action needs to happen.
So would you like to see a totally freehold system? And also, additionally, what about people who already live in leasehold properties? This is only going to apply to new builds. What about people who are facing huge charges now?
We'd like to see a much fairer system, and I think that certainly starts with the houses, with new build houses, where there might be some very exceptional circumstances where they might need to be sold on leasehold. So, for example, if the land is owned by the National Trust, or if it's, for example, in a cathedral precinct. But in almost every case, there's no reason, so we don't want to see that going forward, and we're consulting on how that can be made to work and how we can bring that in quickly. With those people that are already in leases, clearly that's harder to deal with, but what we've seen already from the industry is that those builders and developers that are responsible are already taking action. We've seen an announcement in recent weeks by Taylor Wimpey, for example, that has set aside £130 million to help existing customers, and I would expect today that all developers, those that are responsible, should be listening to this. They should be listening to their customers, they should be listening to what the government's got to say about this, and they should be taking action. And going forward, I also want to see how we can help those existing leaseholders have a better right of, better express their consumer rights and have a better right of redress.
So why not introduce a cap now for people who are living in those properties? That could be something that you could do quite quickly, surely.
Well, look, this is a consultation. It's an 8-week consultation. We also do want to take views from others. We don't profess to have all the answers. I want to listen to others out there, including the people that are in these arrangements, and we want to then take stock of that. But the kind of measures that we've put in the consultation, the ones that we're considering, I think they can make a huge difference.
Secretary, while we've got you, I want to ask you about Grenfell Tower and the continuing situation there. You told the House of Commons last week that no councils had requested extra money from the government. Now, according to the Huffington Post, Brent Council have said that is not true. They asked for £10 million for sprinklers and safety alarms. And John Healey also says that there are 5 other councils who have written to you. So can you clear up exactly what councils have been in touch with you and why they haven't received the money they've asked for?
Well, councils will get in touch with my department on many different things, and when they do, eventually that will be brought to my notice. But what we've been very clear about, and I think this is the really important point, is that during these testing period of councils looking at all the buildings that they've owned, we've said that they should make sure that whatever measures are required, whatever has been recommended by their local fire and rescue service, they shouldn't hesitate, they should take those measures, and whatever council, anywhere in the country, if they cannot afford to do so, they should approach us and we will work with them and make sure they have the funding that's required.
But it seems they have, and they've received no response. So, have you lied to the House of Commons? Because certainly Brent Council is saying they have asked for money and they haven't had a response. Yeah, I appreciate you're asking them to get in touch now, but these councils say they have been in touch.
No, what I've said, including the House and Commons and elsewhere, is that I'm not aware of any council that's got in touch with me, but that doesn't mean to say they haven't been in touch with other people in my department, and once their requests are then prepared and I will receive advice, then of course we'd look at them. But that's exactly how the process should work. But I think the important thing here is to be very clear to every council that they should get on with all the necessary work, anything that's recommended by their local fire and rescue service, and for those councils, and there may well be some, that have an affordability issue, they should then approach us when we will work with them.
OK, we've also discovered this weekend that 2,000 homes in Kensington and Chelsea are empty. 600 of them have been empty for over 2 years. 50 of them have been unoccupied for 15 years. Isn't that completely unacceptable? And would you agree with the local MP, Emma Dent Code, that it is a disgrace that so many people are allowed to buy those homes, not live in them, just to park their money when there are so many homeless people, and people now looking for places to live from Grenfell Tower?
Well, the number of these empty homes in England is at the lowest level since records began, so there's been great progress, especially in recent years.
There's still 2,000 of them sitting empty, and 50 for 15 years empty, though, Minister.
I think the measures that we've taken in recent years to really limit the number of empty homes, they have been making a big difference. But you're looking forward, we always need to see what more we can do, especially when you look at our capital city and other parts of the country, where we still have people that are roughly sleeping, for example, we need to take action. And that's why we've said, and I announced in our housing white paper, some of the action we'll be taking in the recent manifesto. We've said how we're going to adopt this policy and pilot this policy of housing first that I've seen work successfully in other countries. There is always more that we can do, and whether it's working with councils or central government taking the lead, we will always be exploring that.
Would you like to see the council maybe offer to buy some of those properties?
I think that's exactly the kind of thing the council has been doing in the past, but I think from what you've said, there's always more that can be done.
OK. Mr Javid, thank you very much indeed for your time this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much.